G'day, legends. Welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. Massive news coming out. I'm not unemployed for the next 2 years, which is very exciting. We'll go into that. We'll also go into the Richmond game, who wins on the last breath. Oh, that was a good one. And also Charlie Curnow. Kicks 10, kicks the double bag. And we're obviously going to preview that Carlton versus Collingwood game on Friday night this week. There's plenty in this ep, so settle in. Let's get to it. All right, well, let's get into the podcast. Welcome, Brayden.
Oh, g'day, Mason Cox. Now, you touched on it off the top. Congratulations. Another 2-year contract extension?
2 years, yes.
2 years. They don't just give them out there for the very best of players, mate. You must be excited.
I was happy with what they gave me, and I've had 2 years under Fly, 2 more years. I'm very excited. Been incredible what he's been able to build culture-wise and everything else, and I'm honored to be able to be given the opportunity.
Now, I found out because I've read an article. Is that how you found out? How did you? What?
I know we're starting to get into the NBA type style of reading it on Twitter. But no, I've known for a while, but we were supposed to release it with the club, but somehow someone gets inside information, which is, whenever contracts are not a public thing, it's very interesting how that happens. I actually did make a phone call to Carlton's lawyer, so the Age might be getting a few phone calls this week, just to check in, see how you're going.
They're going to be sweating because last time it was leaked through the AFL. Jesus, the whole joints are just.
I can never just enjoy my own release of things, except for on this podcast.
Just one big sieve. Well, again, congratulations on the 2-year contract extension. Jeez, you'll be freaking old by the time.
I'll be an old sack of shit.
Well, you're 32, 34. It's like you're chasing pendles.
But the beauty is, for the next 2 years, we can do what we're about to get into. A few more clangers.
Oh, 100%. And I've been excited for these all week. Now, a few weeks ago, I was talking about the VFL and how strong the competition is now. I might have gone a bit early on this one because my clanger of the week is unfortunately, they say don't kick them while they're down, mate. But I'm laying the boots in. I'm laying the boots in, mate. Northern Bull Ants played a whole game, scored 4 behinds.
4 behinds.
4 big behinds. Footscray, the old Bulldogs VFL team, 161.
Oh.
Yeah,
that is rough.
She's a bit of a shellacking. Now we had a plumber out there running around, big old Jordan Sweet, 50 hitouts.
That's sweet.
We had big Toby McLean, not so big, but Toby McLean, big performance, 33 touches, 3 goals, and big Rory lob. Just heading back, he's just sharpening the tools in the tool shed. He went back there, 5 goals, 10 marks. That's what you like to see.
That's it, man. We should have a little shout out for a VFL game of the week, I think, every week.
Yeah, well,
and the shout out this week is
it's probably not the Northern Bull Ants. Yeah, it's unfortunate. The VFL's in all sorts of areas at the moment because you got, you got these big name AFL players going back and playing, Jimmy Phillips, the electrician that's running out there on the weekend playing for Franger. It's like, how are you meant to compete with that? It's a bit of a fall from grace from the VFL. I want to see it bounce back. So I don't know what needs to happen for that to bounce back, but there's nothing better than a few $5 tins sitting up on the hill, mate.
Oh, jeez. I've always seen Frankston. Oh, man, they got the bongo drums out there. They got a full experience down there in Frankston.
A couple Gatorade bottles up there on the hill.
Yeah, you best believe it. Those who have listened to this podcast know what we're talking about, you know what I'm saying? But I'll get into my clanger. It actually happened over the weekend, and once again, I'm clanging myself. This seems to be a weekly ordeal.
I feel like you're just clanging on purpose because you haven't done any prep for the segment. You're like, shit, I need something. I got
to figure something out here. Well, over the weekend, I kind of lost my shit. Well, I realized that, the whole dissent rule is out the door, so I can do whatever I want now. And
And you were going to town.
I lost it. Essentially, I kind of volleyballed, passed it to one of our other players in defense, and it was in D50, which was real nerve-wracking after I got the free kick against. And it was considered a throw. And whenever the umpire came over to me, he did the motion for a throw, right? It's an underhand kind of like throw. And I was kind of confused by that.
That's not what I did.
That's not what I did. I was like, sir, I don't know if you saw. It was an overhand slap, kind of like a hit out, you'd almost say, from a ruckman. Apparently those aren't allowed in play.
No, well, yeah, I was sitting on the couch and I was just like, ooh, oh no. And it's right. You're like, I feel like you really got to put in the I'm innocent plea when you're in D50. You're just like, I got to plea for my life here. The coach he's on the bench. He's not that far away. But yeah, the commentary was even funny. It was like, it was like, he'd gone back and lined up and he's having his shot and they're like, Mason's still going.
Still going. He wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't tell me why. And the reason why is because I held it too long is I think what happened.
Yeah. It was a bit of, the parcel delivery.
Yeah,
It was.
you can't loft it. You have to slap it, apparently.
No, but.
We'll get into the games, though. I won't talk anymore about that, Braden. We'll move on. It's embarrassing enough. We'll move into the games. The first round that we had, so the first game of the round was Essendon versus Bulldogs. Big win for the Bulldogs. This was a real top 8 battle to see who might make it to the finals this year, and the Bulldogs came out on front at Marvel Stadium.
It was a big game going in, a lot on the line for both teams, and unfortunately, it just seems like Essendon's not quite there. And they had Ridley. Their defense was standing up really strong for a lot of this onslaught, but unfortunately, Ridley went down with a quad. One thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week was Lukey Beveridge doing his hand. Now that's a funny story within itself. Punching the whiteboard, bit of motivation. He said it wasn't aimed at one player. It was just more of a G up of the whole thing. It's pretty embarrassing little situation breaking your hand.
I mean, we've all wanted to do it, right? We've all wanted to punch a wall. There's just some people that actually go through with it, we've all had that inclination. You're pissed off, upset, whatever it is. Maybe you want to throw a phone. There's been a few of those. Maybe you want to just the phone on the table, break the phone on the table. We've all seen that footage. But yeah, the fist through a whiteboard, usually those are pretty strong.
Yeah. Well, at least it wasn't a player because that would have done some damage. Now, the game kicked off. This was literally me. I was sitting on the couch, looked down, looked up. Big old 2 meter Peters kicked a goal.
Yeah, 19 seconds in.
This thing was lightning. I was like, how did
fastest goal of the year so far?
It was crazy. It was very, very quick and a nice little crumbing goal off the pack for a big 2 meter.
Big fella crumb.
2 meter Peter. But it was a decent game. It wasn't like I just feel like Essendon, although they've shown a lot of promise, they probably haven't really been there against the top 8 teams. I think they've only really beaten one of the top 8 teams that they've come up against this year. But I think Brad Scott's done a really good job of setting expectations for the fans, like coming into the season, kind of saying that we're going to show promise and we're going to try as hard as we can.
Yeah.
But we're realistically probably not in the window. And I think that's pretty much exactly where they are. I think from an Essendon fan perspective, the best thing is that you know what you're going to get out of them every week. Like if they're going down fighting, they're tackling, scrapping, a lot of pressure, which is good to see.
It was a very defensive game. You look at the Bulldogs, they've won 9 out of the last 10 since Luke Beveridge took over the Bulldogs. So they didn't really have probably, a bit of history on their side going into this game. But the Dogs did. They played pretty well throughout the game, and then the Dogs, I think, just pulled away in the end. I think they kicked the last 4 goals. So it was a good game, I feel like, for most of it. Very defensive game, like I said, though, so probably not as exciting as far as the forward line stuff. But you got people like Bailey Smith was just tackling people left, right, and center. That man's mullet was just flowing in the air while he was just absolutely smacking people left, right, and center.
They were talking about his tackling technique. Did you see that? Do you think that he's actually adapted that tackle because of the way the game's moving? He was pinning an arm, but he wasn't slamming them down. And he was getting paid some good holding the ball decisions and stuff it. They were banging on about it on the commentary that it was just he's adapted his technique. He's adapted
his technique to lay a pillow down as soon as he lays him down.
And I was thinking at the start, it's come on. It's you're always taught to kind of pin the arm and stuff. But then he did it so many times. It was
3 or 4 times I felt like, yeah.
And so it might be something to watch out for. And it might be the template moving forward. Now, one thing that I did want to ask you about this, Buku Kamis.
Let's go, Buku! Buku, my boy!
How does you feel seeing this little fella in the ruck? But he's got some hops. He was jumping.
But he's got some hops. Don't get me wrong. He's not big enough to play probably ruck full time, but
it's the body. If you get to body him up,
I think he was English is still a number 1 ruck. I hate to tell you, Buku, but I reckon he's still got you there. But he's a freak athlete. He is. He can jump really high and he can move around. He's one of those ruckmen that, he's not there going in there and saying we expect you to win every hit out. He's just there to compete and everything else. And I love seeing him in there. Just he's been tossed around, a bit. He's come back to from the VFL and back to the AFL, and it's just cool to see him out there. I love something something different in the Rock. Just love a different face in there, you know? Yeah. It's the same plumbers in there every single week, and we're all just mates, don't get me wrong, but it's always great to see someone else just giving it a red hot crack.
And that's what I feel like when you got the two bigs in there, it's kind of like most of the time it's a bit of a stalemate. Like the ball dribbles down and then the mids go to work. So it's good when there's these little mismatches. And then he turns into a midfield, like fully agile, running around, speedy midfielder. So it's kind of cool to see. Oh, no Thursday night game. My life was thrown into chaos. Like, what are you?
I feel like we should, I think it's pretty obvious Thursday night was a success and we should continue that.
Yeah. I wasn't big for the oversaturation of Thursday nights previously, but now it's like, I just sat there and I just looked at the wall. I didn't know what to do. What do you do?
You don't even turn the TV on. You just sat there, blank TV, just going, how does this work?
Well, I didn't plan for it, so I didn't make any plans or anything. I just sat there. So that was good. Richmond Hawthorn really made up for lost time, though, because it was looking like Hawks were just going to steal this one. And
we've been fans of the Hawks for a long time. And it looked like, I was thinking of this game, I was like watching, I was like, oh yes, like we can go on the pod this week and be like, we get to pop up Hawthorn, let's go.
And it was crazy because Richmond still had a fair bit on the line. Like their season's still alive. They're scrapping and holding on for a top 8 spot. And for all money kind of looked over, it was Hawthorn were up by 31 points with about 16 to go in the last.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
That's a decent lead.
That's, maybe go and catch the train. If you're a Richmond supporter, get out, beat the rush.
Hey, real Jack Rewald, jump the fence, catch the train, eh? You remember that?
Bit of that, yeah.
That was the first week I came to Australia that shit happened. It was so funny. My brother and I watched him run across the field and jump the fence to get on the train.
Oh, it's so crazy. But as it happens, Richmond really got a run on, kicked 6 goals straight and won by a point, which is insanity, keeping their finals hopes alive. What was the catalyst for this change in momentum? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I don't know, like Hawthorn's like a young group, right? And like Richmond's got that experience and they've been there a million times. They know like what they need to do whenever it comes to clutch moments to be able to get across the line. I think it just comes down to a bit of experience. Like Baker with the 63 seconds left to snap that goal. It's just one thing after another, like one momentum thing happens to the next, and then it kind of doubles and triples and quadruples, and then you feel like you're on top of them, and you feel it on the other side too. If you're Hawthorn, like you feel, oh shit, like we're looking at the clock every time going like, how much time's left? Are we like, what's the score? What's, like kind of going back and forth. But there's plenty of opportunities. Like Trent Cotchin missed a few like kind of easy goals. But the interesting one I loved over this game was the Yvonne Soldo and Ned Reeves combo. These two guys, good mates. And I've known them for a long time, good friends with them. And it's like, I love seeing two people go against it in tall, like lanky bastards. Like just large fellas.
It was, how did you see the matchup? Because there was a bit of an incident with Reeves tackling Soldo, and they really didn't assess him straight away or anything for how big a hit it was. So,
well, big boys, they're tough. Tough as nails.
Yeah, the more I look for it over the course of the weekend, I feel like there's a massive discrepancy in how bigger players are treated compared to smaller players.
100%. Are you kidding me?
It's like, a big guy gets absolutely wrecked in a tackle and it's like, well, you should be able to take it, big fella, stand up. But if a little guy gets wrecked, it's like, oh my goodness, are you okay? Stop the game.
Stop the game.
We're going to pick it down at AFL House. We'll stand out the front. Anyone over 200 centimeters. There's not that many.
There's not that many. There's like 10 of us, I feel like. Talk about big things. Talk about the big win. Carlton over West Coast.
I didn't see it coming.
140-69.
Did you see this coming or what?
Yes. I feel for him. We've talked about it many a times, what West Coast has had to go through this year. It's oh man, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, to be honest. It's been frustrating beyond belief, I'm sure, from their side of it. But, Carlton gets to play West Coast twice in a year, which is, it's good for them, I guess.
I think it's pretty obvious now that, the whole West Coast situation isn't good for the entire competition because it's like the teams that are obviously getting to verse them twice are getting a massive boost. And in a year where the ladder is so even through the middle, it's clearly showing, and it's having a negative impact on the competition, and like obviously a smaller one, which we'll get to. Charlie Curnow kicked 10 against them.
Kicks a double back.
He kicked 9 against them earlier in the season. So he's
19 goals off one team.
Yeah, he's almost, he's probably going to win the Coleman off the back of Versus West Coast twice and kicking 2 massive bags. But
wild.
It does need a little bit of celebration. Anytime we see 10 goals in the competition, it's a massive accomplishment.
It's huge. It's insane to think you can kick 10 goals in a game. You would think no one else is playing the forward line. You're just sitting there going, just kick it to me. I don't care who else is around me. Clear the 50 out.
It does, make for an interesting kind of debate about Curnow and Mackay, both big pillars playing in the team.
Yeah.
What dynamic that has compared to, Charlie just getting the paddock and he gets to roam around and do Charlie things coming out of the square. And he's had a couple of really good weeks, all given, this was against West Coast.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see kind of the next, 4 or 5 rounds because obviously, Mackay's out. How he performs over the next 4 to 5 weeks is going to be interesting from Carlton's standpoint of just how their forward line's functioning because there's so much criticism and, talk around their forward line in the front half of the year. But now in the last probably 5-6 weeks, really since the bye, like they've been smashing it. They've been going really well and they've been getting the ball inside 50 and like they've been able to convert. And there's all this stuff, 10-15 weeks ago about their goal kicking and how they can't do this and that, and then you got Charlie kicking 10. So then you're like, okay, remember that whole thing? It was the same season. When you remember like how you had a totally different experience and totally different saying whenever you're actually talking about Carlton at the beginning of the year?
It's been week to week, game to game. There's so much like the swings and roundabouts of like, Geelong's cooked. They're actually going to be the first team to win the flag. Oh, wait, no, Geelong's back. Yeah. Oh, Carlton's cooked. Oh, Carlton's back.
This is a good story to talk shit about someone, Braden. But we'll get into that later also.
I get it that it's like you can only really talk on points that are before you that are happening. Yeah. So it's like, but it's just the crazy, like, ups and downs of the roller coaster of this season has been pretty nuts. Now, Carlton have a few outs with Silvani hurting his knee, Walsh doing his hamstring, which is a pretty big one. Jesse Motlop with a calf. They do get Cripps back, who was just having a bit of a rest and relaxation week, just a bit of R&R coming up against West Coast.
For a big Friday night game, yeah.
Yeah, there's a pretty big one coming up, which we'll also get into. And also Doherty.
I'm like the biggest Doherty fan. Well, I know like Collingwood fans are going to hate me for saying that, but what he's been able to do and the story he's created and had to go through, it's incredible what he's doing.
This is another little good mini segue. Nathan Buckley playing for his little community-based team.
Oh, yes.
That was Essendon Colours.
Yeah.
Is that just the weirdest thing to see ever?
I mean, probably more for you. I didn't watch Nathan Buckley play back in the day, so I don't really have that affiliation. I have him affiliation of being attached to the Collingwood Football Club and not like playing in the colours as much. But I know it was a big deal for people because people lost their shit. Yeah. It was like, oh my God, how dare you?
And although that was off-brand, the very on-brand thing for Bucks is unfortunately he did his hamstring in that game.
Did he? Oh my gosh. Bucks.
Which is,
he kicks so hard. That man can bullet a ball.
It was kind of funny. I think I brought it up early days on this podcast, but working at Collingwood and playing indoor soccer, it would always be admin versus like all these ex-football superstars. Like it's like
Scott Burns.
Yeah, Scott Burns, Rob Harvey, Pebs,
Tarks.
Bucks, all these guys. It's like I'm with fucking Dave from accounting and like Mary from payroll and shit. You're rolling out there, but the only thing that you could have is like you could outlast them because you could just hear pop, ping, wow. And it's like, hamstring, quad, he's like, they're just dropping like flies. So that was the only way and they would get so competitive and so angry.
Oh man, there's some definitely some hamstrings, some quads, some knees, everything.
They don't lose the passion.
People come back in like crutches the next day. I'm like, what happened? They're like, indoor soccer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We had a Johnny who was like the CFO or whatever, top dog. He like broke his arm as like the goalkeeper and stuff. Like we had ACLs popping and stuff everywhere. It was fun times. That's what you missed the most.
We'll move into the next one. Brisbane versus Geelong. This was a big game up in Brisbane, up at the Fortress. We all know the Fortress, very tough place to play. Brisbane's very good up there. And Geelong on a bit of a hot streak. Unfortunately, couldn't get over the line. 11-point loss for Geelong. But the Brisbane Lions, they are a threat. There's no doubt about that. There's some question marks around them after the Melbourne game. But I think now with this game and going into the last few rounds, I reckon they're going to be a force in the finals for sure.
It's all just a matter of where and when, because it probably looked a bit more impressive early days. It looked like Brisbane was really going to blow them out of the water. And then to Geelong's credit, they kind of fought back and made it a pretty respectable scoreline in the end. But yeah, I'm thinking it just matters where each team finishes on the ladder because it makes a massive difference. Now, it's an obvious statement where each team finishes on the ladder, but I wanted to ask you, coming out of the Port game, what you think is the hardest travelling game in footy at the moment? Is it Port in Adelaide? Is it Geelong in Geelong? Or is it Brisbane in Brisbane? Or is it West Coast in Perth?
West Coast and Perth at the moment is probably not number one. 2018, 19, 20, right?
100%.
Like around that time was awesome. It was so crazy. Like just the support base they have, and it's, I don't know, they're feral in like all the fun ways. It's always, and like Port Adelaide, very similar to the West Coast crowd. I feel like as far as their supporter base. Yeah, Adelaide's a different ground. Is probably one of the biggest ones. They're very skinny ground, which I always find interesting. So it's a bit more of a contested down the line kind of game. Then you got Brisbane. Yeah, Brisbane's tough to play at. Like they're the furthest we have to travel, but also they're just a really good team at the moment. And the Gabba's just, I don't know, it just seems like a place they just refuse to lose at, and they play the ground really well. I think
you won't have to verse Geelong at GMHB.
Yeah, GMHB I've never really been to. I've been there for one game, a NAB Cup game. One of my first games I ever played. Shout out to Dane Swan.
You did really well in that game.
Shut the fuck up in the middle of the game.
You were dominating in that one. And Swanee was playing forward for his first time, and he kicked 4 goals or something.
I'll never
What could have been?
Swanee, I was sitting there. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast, but I remember rolling back, and there's a kick, they were having a set shot or something. I was like, Swanee, roll back on defense. It's a NAB Cup game. He just looks back at me. He goes, it's a fucking NAB Cup game. Chill out. And I was like, yep, fair call.
That's so good.
My first year at the club, and Dave Swan's essentially gone, shut up, dude.
Oh, that's right.
It was one of the great. I was like, just put me in my place. Thank you very much. See you later.
That's almost up there with Alex Rance telling Matthew Richardson to run through the cones at preseason.
Yeah.
He's like, come on, run through the fucking in his first year. Yeah. Matthew Richardson's played 400 games, kicked 700 at the MCG.
Calm down, hot shot.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. I will say GMHBA looks like a bit of IKEA furniture sitting on the ground at the moment. It's like nuts and bolts and shit going all over the place.
Sorry, to answer that question, I'll say Brisbane at the moment.
Yeah, because you haven't done it. Because you went up earlier in this year. Still question marks over Collingwood, whether they can get the job done. But it's only 1 win, 1 loss away. Port, they've dropped a couple now, so they've opened themselves up to flip positions with Brisbane.
Who knows?
And that's the difference. So it might be Brisbane v Port in Adelaide or Brisbane v Port in Brisbane. It's going to be a massive change. Only weeks left. Only time will tell. Now, a sad one out of this game, Ashcroft.
Yes.
Did his ACL, which is, he was probably almost looking like he was going to be named the rising star. I don't know what this will play in that, but it's so devastating. Every injury obviously is terrible and you never want to see it, but when it's just a shining star of the competition on the rise towards the end of the season, it's just devastating.
It's smash you, and you'd be so frustrated and flat. It'd be so just annoying to know that you were so close to the end of the season and you weren't able to complete it. And then also having such the good season he had and knowing you're in the chance for the rising star. I can't imagine the demons in his head, but hopefully he's got the support, of the boys of the moment getting around him, and he can get through it and, maybe learn something like Matt Rowell did whenever he put the headphones on and became kind of like an assistant coach. So maybe he gets to do that and have a bit of a different perspective on, how a game's run and the stuff behind the scenes. Who knows?
And he'll be able to celebrate because he gets the goal of the year. That one's a lock, I reckon.
Well, a TV or something.
The kung fu kick out of midair. That was an absolute beauty. Now, this game had a few little talking points, a few little shining moments, but ultimately extremely disappointing again for Fremantle. Fremantle v Sydney. Freo going down 76-105 at home, which is another big one. Everyone, it's all about expectations at the start of the year, and expectations were that Freo would be thereabouts again, and they've just had a massive drop-off. I think sitting around 15th on the ladder, and these poor starts. They just can't get the motor started. We tried to give them
against us. Against us. And Sean Darcy's out at the moment, so he's obviously a big pillar in their team, with the ruck position, who just kind of really holds that spot on his own. And they're having to put other people in there and try to make up for, I guess, his absence. But yeah, it's a tough thing. Like Fremantle at home, this was a big game for them to try to show that they can make it into the top 8. And to lose in front of a home crowd to another team that's looking to be in the top 8, it's a tough blow.
Oh, especially if you get a slow start at home and you can't get your crowd into it. Like, you just want to get your crowd up and running. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. Buddy Franklin looked good, took a couple of contested marks, which he's not really known for his contested marking, but looked good out there, kicked 3 goals, and Jai Amos just continues to shine. Talk about a rising star, big pack mark hanger.
Sick.
Does seem to just keep hitting the scoreboard too, so it's good to see. I think Freo really wants this one to just wrap it up, just wrap up this season. Let's go back to the drawing board and start again, while Sydney's just clinging on for dear life every week. They're probably at that bottom. They're at the bottom, at the back of the pack, trying to get into the top 8, but still a chance mathematically, which you always love to say.
I love the mathematically tacked on top. We'll move into the next one. GWS versus the Suns. Your boys. Hey, the big sound.
They're in the 8.
From the west of the town.
They're in the 8, Mason. I think they'll stay there.
Huge.
I think those 4 teams, now Saints knocked kind of Carlton out, but I feel like Carlton to go back in, and that's your 8. I think it's a lot stronger 8 than what we anticipated. So I think it'll be Brisbane, GWS, Carlton, and Bulldogs make up that bottom 4 of the 8. And all of those teams are good and they're hitting their straps at the right time. So I reckon it's going to be a ripping final series. But the GWS Giants, Mace, been calling it forever and a day.
Our favorite teams going against each other. Yeah. It's like, I've been on the Suns bandwagon. You've been on GWS bandwagon. Unfortunately, I did not come out on top.
Big hit for your top 8 chances with the Suns there, mate. It blows my mind that some of these teams that have been losing their coaches throughout the year still could make finals. It's crazy. I imagine 2 teams that had their coach either get sacked or walk away both make the finals in.
It'd be wild.
It's pretty insane. Unfortunately, the Suns can't get it done. I am in the camp of I want the Suns to have some success.
Yes.
Just, I don't know if I'll be alive to see it, mate.
Wow.
It's been that damn long. On my first year in the AFL, as a young pup, I was 21, was the Suns' first year in the competition. Yep. And now I'm 33. I'm almost deceased, and they haven't done anything in that time. So that's what I'm basing that
Who's
off.
the longest from, when's Essendon's last finals appearance?
2000
something?
Early 2000s.
I wonder if Essendon or the Suns has had a longer streak away from finals. I'm going to say Essendon.
I'm going to say Essendon. They've made finals, but they haven't won a final. Yeah. So it's got to be Essendon, because they haven't won a final well before 2011.
Wild.
It's crazy that you just brought Essendon up just to give him a cheeky little clip.
No, I was just thought of it, That was not. I
love those because you can really dust off those ones. It's like you haven't known AFL existed before they've won a final.
It's a whole thing everyone keeps talking about. It's like Essendon hasn't won a final in X amount of days.
Well, players that are playing AFL right now weren't born when they were last won a final.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just assume Essendon's been around the mark for a long time. They'd eventually won a final at some point.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but something terrible happened along the journey around 2012, Mason.
Yep. That was going on whenever I came to this country. And I was like, oh, AFL, a drug-related thing.
What's this?
This is such a morally and ethical thing here.
Anyway, getting the train back on the tracks here, Mace. GWS absolutely flying along. And I reckon they're going to do some damage, especially if they can get past that first week and then watch out whoever's lost the first week of finals on the other side. It's going to be, and I reckon I wasn't very excited about the final series only a month ago, but the way that it's shaping up, everyone said it's like this 2-horse race, but there's still plenty more to play out in this final series. Let's jump into this one because it was absolute nail biter. 2 very good teams. Melbourne v Adelaide. Melbourne getting the job done by 4 points, but boy, oh boy, was it a close one. And Adelaide, although they have started to lose a few games, they've shown great improvement this year. Even if they don't make the 8, they lost to Collingwood, who is the team that everyone's saying is, unbeatable. They lost to them twice by a kick. Like,
they're a good team.
It's a bloody good team. And like, they're still working through some things, but no doubt they'll be firing up again next year if they don't make finals this year, which is probably looking a bit unlikely now. But Melbourne gets the job done and still looking dangerous in the top 4. Bit of Max Gawn watch.
Yeah, we'll be on a Gawn watch, I think, for the next little chunk until
wasn't as dominant as his first game. Didn't have the big 29 touches, a bajillion hitouts. I did have 38 hitouts, but 13 disposals, 2 goals too.
Not a bajillion.
Yeah, not a bajillion. He didn't hit the big bajillion.
He's not a plumber this week, okay?
But Adelaide, 7-goal last quarter.
I'm strong.
But just fell short. Unfortunately, Rankin did his hammy. We're talking about some big stars going down this week. Tex Walker doing Tex Walker tings, kicking 4 goals. But yeah, it's one of those games that if you're coming out of it as Melbourne, you get the dub.
Yeah.
But, are you that satisfied? Are you that confident that you're like, it's one of those bit of a little hollow feeling coming out.
But it's these games like this, right? You've got the teams that are on that cusp of the 8 that makes this real interesting, because every game you're looking at, you're going, oh, is this the make it or break it game for them? Like, do they need to have this game to be able to get into the 8? And then obviously Melbourne's going like, well, they're up there in the top 4. And it's one of those things you're like, okay, you have to beat one of these big teams to be able to make it into the finals and be able to prove that you deserve that spot.
And that's where I think the 8 is being shaped at the moment based off the fixture and what's left. Like, you might see a team and you go, oh, they're not in form, but they're probably going to make the 8 because, they've got a couple of like the bottom 3 teams coming up. But yes, you want to earn that final spot. You want to be beating the top 4 teams. If you're going to be making it, you want to be making it and doing some damage on the other side. So Melbourne still showing why they're, the top 4 team that they are. And that top 4 still looking very strong.
Speaking of the bottom 3 teams, as you mentioned, North Melbourne played St. Kilda. And wow, I was like, we talked about Hawthorn, maybe Pip and Richmond. North Melbourne about Pip St. Kilda.
It was one of those games. I actually went and attended this one live. Now, I don't go to a lot of games live. I like the warmth of my couch and a couple of cold ones on.
The roof over your head?
A bit of a roof over our head, and we'll get to that. But, yeah, I had a mate in town who's a big Saints fan, and when I saw St. Kilda North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, I was just licking my lips and said, mate,
we're on.
We need to get to this one, big fella. Because, he was like, oh, I'll come down. I'll actually be able to watch a nice, comfortable win against North Melbourne. Well, he went a bit early on that one because the shockwave got sent up his spine when they were leading by 3 goals going into the last. But Saints just, got the job done. North kind of ran out of steam, and the Saints ran over the top of them. Now, I tell you what, watching this LDU bloke live is actually pretty crazy. I've never seen someone dance through traffic like him, but, we've seen Scott Pendlebury play for the last 34 years.
I reckon there's some other young kid on our team that's going pretty well.
But LDU is very impressive to see. He can just sidestep blokes, push them off. It was great to see him live. I did want to get into some of the, little stories in and around this game because it was
going on.
It was definitely more interesting than the game itself because the game itself was a stinker. The highlights for me were going to the runner at Marvel where you tap your card to get in, then you can go in and pick up fish and chips and you can just leave. That was pretty fun. That was
awesome. That was best thing you could think of.
That was a hell of a lot funner than watching, St. Kilda go at like 30% by foot. But the build up to this game was bizarre. So Lee Montagna and Rui over there in America, just phoning it in, came out and said that, the standards at St. Kilda were subpar. And why they're starting to play so well is because the standards have lifted because Big Rossi's back now. Yep. Obviously, Rats, former coach.
Not happy.
Now he's over there coaching temporarily at North Melbourne. Not happy that Rui gave him this little clip. So he clips him back. Said, hey, what would he know? He's only comes in when he wants a free massage. Whack, whack.
Huge.
So that's a nice little build up there. And out of nowhere, Rossi comes in and goes, yeah, well, we're both young teams, but we're sitting higher on the ladder. They're way down in the basement, so we must be doing something right. It's like, oh, g'day, Rossi.
G'day, Rossi. Come out, whack, jump into the conversation, but feel free.
Kane Corns was in there somewhere doing.
Of course he was.
Kane Corns thing. So there was just, they were trying their best to promote it.
Jeez, they stirred the pot between the three of them.
As Fly says, we got to keep the banter in footy, and boy, did it set up for a game that was very subpar. But we're coming out of it. Ross wasn't, he wasn't just sitting on his laurels. He wanted to keep promoting this game after it was dead and buried. We had Roofgate. Now, he wasn't happy that the roof was left open, and what happens in winter in Melbourne? It rains.
Yeah.
So the ground was in less than ideal conditions, mate.
Well, this is the funny thing, because I remember going back probably 6 weeks ago, they're like, roof is staying closed the rest of the year. We're not opening the Marvel roof. No chance that thing's going to see any sunshine, right? Well, it happens to say they lied. And I was there actually today. I was actually there today, and I did a little shoot there, and I walked onto the ground. And anyone that's walked onto like a very soaked ground, right? You like take a step and it's like, and you got the water coming around your shoes.
Clipping that up for a soundbite. That's beautiful.
That's disgusting. And that's what the ground was like. It was like you had just played and it poured down rain. So I don't know why it was open. I have no idea what the functionality behind that was, or if they were trying to repair the ground or something. Or maybe they're probably prepping it for that golf game they're playing over there at Marvel. Trying to get the big bucks.
Got to do something.
To make the money for that place. But yeah, it was unique. I didn't understand why they did it, and the ground was not dry by any means whenever I went on it today. But it is what it is. I'm sure there's some reasoning behind there, and the groundskeeper's doing something we don't know.
We've been having conversations about the Docklands Stadium roof since before Essendon last won a final. Like, it's been going on for that long. I don't even know. Like, they have it open when it's sunny so the fans can't see. That's great. They have it open every time it decides to rain. They're like, oh, it's about to rain. Better open the roof and make sure the grass gets soaking wet. Yeah, I never know. Just weld it shut, wouldn't you?
I 100% think we should weld it shut. I don't think. Maybe it's for cricket, so you can hit it higher. I'm not really sure how cricket works, so you can hit a home run higher.
Don't get me started about like building it on top of a car park. Like,
that's a whole thing.
She's a bit hard as a rock. We've got some feedback over the stadium over some time.
Yeah, we've given some feedback. There's no doubt about that. But I think we're fans of the roof at the MCG. I know that might upset some people, but
God, that was a big one.
Here we go again. But no, the roof at Marvel, I think, should just be, like you said, welded shut and never opened again. And that would make everyone a lot happier.
All right, before we talk about the game that everyone wants to talk about, Collingwood, Port Adelaide, absolute barn burner.
Huge.
We got to talk about something that involves one of our own.
Oh.
Now, let me get into this because I don't know if this is on your radar, but there's been someone talking a bit of trash week on week, and it's got to a point where we can't just sit here and ignore it anymore. So I got to bring it up. Now, clearly it's not about me because I'm the golden child of this podcast, Mason.
I assume it's about me.
So
who is it?
It's Kingy from...
The King Brothers.
Yeah, the King Brothers are talking trash.
Wow, they're so lovely.
No, David King from Fox Footy's First Crack.
First crack or first take?
No, it's First Crack.
Oh, is it a show?
It's a show.
Okay,
so
who's on it?
It's David King, Lee Montagna, and Hutto is the host.
Hi, Hutto. What a legend.
And,
big fan of that guy.
Yeah, so for the past couple of weeks now, Kingy's had a bit of an issue with you. Not so much... I don't know if it's as much an issue as that he just wants the best from you, right? So he wants to see you...
That's not my experience with Kingy.
He wants to see you excel. So he just wants a bit more from you in either the ruck or just the forward line.
What did he say? What did he say?
Well, I'd been leaving it because it was, just little chips. You get them a lot.
It's not a real jab. It's just a pathetic attempt at trying to make me pissed off.
You get a lot of little chips along your journey, but this one actually had a really cool tagline with it that turned it into a thing. Now, I think it's a bit of a thing. So he said, we talk a lot about Mason, which we do. He's got his own podcast. But he said he's a bit like Seinfeld,
Great show.
A big show about nothing, which is...
He would have really thought that one through, didn't he?
Yeah, so I thought I'd bring this one up because it's reached this, we're almost in beef territory.
Beef? Are we starting beef with it? Is it a podcast they're on?
It's probably technically a podcast. It's on the TV, which we're not.
We're not promoting it either, so don't follow it.
We hardly got the name right, so we got to get there eventually. But I thought that I'd bring it up here to give you a chance to respond because,
Seinfeld, was it?
Yeah, Seinfeld, a big show about nothing, which is obviously one of their taglines. But I thought I'd bring it up here because you've been getting chipped along and I just let it go. But now I think it's escalated into almost beef territory. Do we have beef, Max?
No, I don't really care, to be honest. He's just making comments in the media. That's his job, to make comments, whether it's positive or negative. Some reason it seems as though he's got a little out for me, and not so happy with the way I play or my position or whatever it may be. He always seems to put a little sly jab in there for myself. Not the first time, not the last, not the only person on that little show that does that. Love you, Hutto. It's not you. But yeah, it is what it is. It's media. And to be honest, that stuff, it's just opinionated stuff. And, at the end of the day, I just look at it and it's like someone's trying to make a career.
Yeah.
Someone's trying to make a career. And if it means trying to tear other people down along the way, we're not about that on this podcast. You know why? Because we're positive people.
Oh, I love a good tear down. It's good. And,
maybe we should get Kingy on the podcast.
No, I got,
or better yet, the King Brothers. I think that's
Hutto in my sights. If you watch it, Hutto, if you say one thing. Now, what I will say is, obviously, you signed your big 2-year contract.
He'll have another job for 2 years. I'll give him that.
It's a real win-win for everyone. Mace gets a 2-year contract. Kingy gets 2 more years worth of content. Oh, it's great to see. So it's great that the Collingwood Football Club had a bit more faith in you than Kingy, and he obviously wasn't sitting in the list managers meetings.
How about this? We'll send out an olive branch. Kingy, if you want to come on the podcast, feel free.
Oh God, I might be a bit redundant. Get Hutto on; he could take my job.
I actually would love Hutto on; he'd be a lot better.
We got to get into this Port Adelaide versus Collingwood game because it was an absolute barn burner. Now, I went through it all last year where I was like, every third quarter time I was like, nah, surely they're not going to do it this year. But I thought I was past that.
Yeah.
And now this game, I was less optimistic. Port Adelaide at home is just a massive game. Yeah. And then when I saw it was wet, I'm like, this thing's just it's going to be a grind. And we're really going to find out how good these two teams are. And the skills for the weather conditions, for starters, were immaculate. I was so impressed. The first couple of goals, it was like pow, pepper, don't argue, banana on the run from 40. And it's like, all right,
we're in.
Buckle up. We're going for a game here. Then it was, straight out of the stoppage, DeGoey, high stepping it out of there. I love it. And then he bangs it in long, mixed stage, just fucking, he just
make great.
Gets the ball, rips it down, get out of me way, snap on the left, bends it around. It's like, what is going to happen in this game? And it didn't stop, Mace. It was good from start to finish. I didn't know how to handle it, but it was bloody good. Now let's deep dive into this boy because it's a juicy
one of the games of the year. I think everyone would admit that. It was such a build up being Adelaide at home, number 2 on the ladder, playing number 1 on the ladder. There was a bit of commentary between Ken Hinckley saying, it was somewhat self-proclaimed, the best team, I guess, which I don't think was actually ever said. But
that's a good technique.
It was kind of like, it was kind of maybe taken into his own words of what was said. Maybe I'm not really 100% sure because I think people tried to find the vision of that and we couldn't. But it added to the entertainment of the whole thing.
They're good ones. You should just next time you just point out just pick a player and just be like, Jed McAtee said that Pendles is too old and needs to retire and stick it up on the board. That's what motivation through lies. That's what we need to get through. But let's start back. Game was great, but we need to go back beforehand, and we will talk exactly about that because Fly was big on the banter. Obviously, at the end of the last game, Braden Maynard set the scene well, and didn't you love to see it was, Port Adelaide better be bringing their A game because we're coming over and we're going to kick your ass type shit. It was so good to see. And then, little byplay back and forth between coaches like throughout the week. After the game, Fly, I want to see it. I want all the smoke. I want all, like, it's good.
He was hyped.
It's good for footy. There was like, I can already see the promo shot next time you guys are versing each other. Because on the siren, Fly is just double fist pumping, hugging people. And in the background, all around me are familiar faces. And Kenny Hinckley's just standing there in the rain, staring over at Fly, just enjoying life. And it's just like, you can tell that that's just to fuel that fire inside him when a fire starts to burn, mate.
When a fire starts to burn.
Oh, but do you love seeing the banter in footy? Because a lot of the time you're just doing a lot of heavy lifting, Mace, over there. You're starting the banter and it's like, come with me, boys.
Come with me. Give me something.
But is that a green light? Is Fly like green light to Braden Maynard? What was coming out of that when, you know, that would have been spoken about at some stage? Is it is it a green light to be saying stuff like that?
Like that's Braden Maynard, you know, and like we want him to be himself and being his authentic self, and that was. And it's, you know, everyone that knows Braden, he's a competitive beast. You know, if you see Braden chasing your ass, you know you're gonna be hurting here in about 2 or 3 seconds. Like, yeah, you're gonna feel good. So no, that was just Braden. He was hyped up from the win, you know, and he was excited about the next game, and it was obviously a big clash. And you know, that was the truth. That is what he wanted to say, and that's who he is. So I think Fly always kind of preaches, be who you are, don't change, you know, the type of person you are. And whenever you talk to the media, and you know, that's why we love Braden, because he's just I mean, you know, we talk about it here. We're like, oh, the wild Maynard comes out of the grass like he's a Pokemon every time there's a fight, you know. He just wants to get into everything, you know, and we love it. Absolutely love it. So no, I love the entertainment side of footy, and you know, a bit of trash talk here and there, whatever it may be between players, or you know, and little statements from coaches, whoever it might be, you know, it adds to the whole spectation of the whole thing, you know, or spectator part of it, you know. It's awesome. I love it.
It was very good. It gives us all a lot to talk about in the lead up to games. Sells tickets. It was how was the crowd over there? Because it just sounded insane. It sounded like the Collingwood Army really turned out. A lot of Collingwood chants. Even a little USA chant started up there for a little second.
Was it really?
Yeah, and it was I think you dished off a handball or something.
That's something small. It was probably my volleyball thing. That's probably it. No, it was awesome, man. The atmosphere over there. I think like Port Adelaide home games, they do it well. The whole don't never tear us apart, you know, and then they've got the fireworks and everything rolling out. Like it's a very much a scene. And like, even if I wasn't a Port Adelaide fan, right? Like, just as a spectator of AFL sport, I feel like everyone should experience a home game for Port Adelaide. And it's a unique, awesome experience there. And like the Collingwood Army came out in force though. Like it was, you know, you'd hear something happen whenever it was good for us, and you'd definitely hear the cheers. So it's incredible what, you know, the fan base we have, and, you know, them showing up to road games and games that aren't home games, you know, whether it be an away team playing at the MCG. Like, I just feel like we always have such a massive amount of fans at every single game. It's incredible to play in front of.
It's a great stadium. I reckon it's probably my favorite stadium. I always loved those little traveling games. I went to the game and I sat in the box with Bucks, which was one of the all-time experiences from a, you know, frightening for your life, just fearing for your safety kind of spectacle. But it was the one Taylor Adams kneed Justin Westhoff in the head, which is also good. Obviously, Tay Adams' 200th game, special man, special player.
Legend.
Jamie Elliott dishing off the little handball in the square. Great awareness to see him coming through.
That was kind of a moment everyone was like, that's cool. Like, that's awesome. Like 200 games to like have the awareness to know that he's behind you and then give it to him, like to let him celebrate that moment it kind of like, I don't know, just kind of like wrapped up like our club, I feel like at times, you know, like very unselfish and, you know, want to bring everyone along with us, whether it be fans and players and teammates and all that, you know, and coaches and admin and everyone else. Like, it's not one person on this journey. It's like a whole group of people. And that kind of just summarized like the experience of the year and what everyone's, you know, been enjoying so much in this journey we've been on so far this season.
We know that these two teams are going to be at the pointy end come finals. So it's a bit of chess. Like, there's a lot of chess playing going on. Do you show your hand early? Do you not?
Yeah.
Dacos, tag. We're talking about Nick variety. Now, he had Willem Drew playing on him.
Yeah.
For this at the start of the game. And it seemed to be working. It's a little clamp down roll. So I don't know if we'll see it again come finals, but you guys were trying things too to kind of break that tag, to get him out of there playing it, because he can play everywhere, off half back, off half forward. He's almost playing in the ruck there at one stage. Was Buku. You would have been preparing for this thing for 20 rounds. It's just not a lot of teams have been doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a compliment. like to Nick. I was thinking this the other day. I was like, whenever someone tags you, it means you're the best player on the ground. Like,
100%.
Like someone's putting a tag on you because you're a damn fucking good player.
You're damaging.
Like you're damaging, and you can change the game within a snap of your fingers. So. Yeah, it happened over the weekend, and it was. I'm sure he probably was aware it's probably going to come to him, but a white game like that, and getting tagged, it's it's got to be frustrating as hell. Like it's got to be so annoying and everything else, and he's obviously had an incredible year so far, and he's continuing to just keep getting better and better every single week. So. I'm sure he's aware that it's going to happen. It's not the first time it's happened to him, and it might happen again in the future. But essentially, it just takes one of their players totally out of the game.
Do you like the tag in footy?
If you're going to tag someone, I think it's okay, but I think umpires need to be aware of it because there's certain people that will tag and probably cross the line as far as what's legal and what's not, as far as grabbing and things like that. And it's like if you need to tag someone, you're going to tag someone and take them completely out of the game like that. You have to do it in a legal manner, which I feel like sometimes that can be a bit of a line that's not drawn hard in sand. So I think there's just the umpire needs to be aware of it in the sense of obviously there's 6 umpires on the ground, right? And there's probably 2 looking at the contest and going to make a call on a contest. Like you almost need to have one looking at that situation. Yeah. If that makes sense, just because 100%. That player is probably going to do some dodgy shit to make sure that the other player doesn't get the ball.
Well, you got it. It's like the whole reason that you're out there. So yeah, it is a very interesting one. I feel like the opposition have the right to be able to try and negate that, but it is a very fine line, and we've seen that throughout the history of football, really. Now, one more tactical choice that, was a bit of a head scratcher, but I feel like it ended up working for you. It was wet there, right? Yeah. The conditions were wet. And Collingwood, no late changes, went in with 2 big boys, big old rucks. Now, it was an interesting call with Markov sitting on the bench, obviously a speedy player. Yep. What was the thinking kind of around that?
I don't really know the coach's mindset around it or anything like that. I know with Dan back and Checkers back and myself and DC, like we just haven't really been able to play together. Like one person's been hurt throughout this whole season. I feel like we haven't really had much time playing on the same ground. So I think, we want to test that out probably. Like that's probably where the idea comes from. But yeah, it was unique. I mean, like the 2 rucks, like I think, you got Charlie Dixon was coming in there, and then obviously you got the big fella that was in there with us, and he ended up getting injured last set, and then we're essentially going up against them in the back end of it, and I don't know. I think maybe I can't really speak on it too much because I'm not a coach per se, but it was an opportunity maybe to just play a group of guys that haven't played too much time together.
Yeah, so and that would make sense. Get that continuity up with all the big boys in the lead up to finals, because I feel like we are in that. We're in those final stages where you want to be locking in the team that you want to be playing for finals. And it's your last real chance. And we see it with Melbourne and the Grundy situation in the lead up to finals. It's your last chance to have a crack at something different before, you're in finals. You don't want to really be experimenting when the final starts. It was a cracking game. Now, one tiny thing that I wanted to pull out of this is, do you feel hard done by? Because every time you get a free kick, a midfielder just gets it and takes off. You probably finish each game with 20 touches if you got your
usually
kicks.
One midfielder, and his name is Nick Dacos. And I actually had, I think it might have, I can't remember if it was Jason Horn-Francis said to me, or someone behind play said to me from Port Adelaide, said, "Well, you're just going to let him take your free kick?" And I was like, well, look at him.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone, and he's a hell of a lot better kick than I am. I'll tell you that. Give it to him.
By the time you back off your mark, he's probably already set up a goal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an interesting one.
It's Nick Dacos, dude. What are you talking about?
Every time I see it happen, I'm like, oh, you got a freak. Oh, it's gone.
It's gone. See ya.
It's not too bad. But how was the big Horn Francis? Did you speak with him after the game? No, I didn't realize how quick he was. He's fast.
Really quick. One person I did talk to after the game, Jones, who lacerated my spleen. I did talk to him after the game. Yeah, he listened to the podcast. Oh, really? I was like, hey, thanks, I appreciate it, brother. But
down
he was
one
like,
spleen, up one
so
listener.
Nice. He's a brick shit ass dude. That guy's huge. You can't move him. He's deceivingly thick. And he was just like, he's like, oh, I heard lacerated spleen last time I got you. I said, yeah, it's all good. And we just had a quick chat about it. He's all, I heard it on the podcast. I was like, oh, how cool is that?
That's so good. You should have flicked him some merch. We've got to get him that merch. Now, I probably buried the lead here. I wanted to save it to the end. But Kenny Hinkley, did you dap him up?
I didn't dap him up. I didn't see him. I was so pissed after the game thinking about it because I was like, I know Braden's going to ask this on the I was
you can't dap him up post-game.
No, it was just not the time nor place, Braden. I'll tell you that. But no, I didn't get a chance to. I didn't see him pre-game. Didn't see him out there. And to walk over to their bench and dap him up mid-game didn't seem appropriate. So,
well, they did interview him mid-game.
Yeah, well, that was wild.
That was so crazy. But
it reminds me of Luke Hodge on the ground, getting his hamstrings done. They've stuck a mic in front of his face whenever he's played for Brisbane. Everyone lost their shit.
So brutal. There was a few little fanboy moments for me over the course of the game. Steele Sidebottom has not missed a beat. How do you come back in and you're that good? He had that spoil right at the death to essentially save the game.
Spoil, a clutch goal, unreal.
It was crazy. Yeah, I forgot the goal at the start of the last to get the wheels spinning. It was a beauty.
I love a spray from Steele too.
Oh, really?
I'd missed a few hit outs that I should have got towards the end of the game. And he looks at me and I'm like, Steele's one of those people you have ultimate respect for, right? And he's like, get your shit together. I'm like, yep, fair call, Steele. Yep, all right, let's go.
And I gave a big pump up to Bobby Hill post game.
Yeah.
It was the absolute example of stats don't paint the full picture.
Him and Bo don't get as much credit as probably the impact they have in games.
He was everywhere, in everything, every tap on, every little bump shepherd, little out in a space. He just created so much. And, he was down there with you on the stats. The 6 or 7 that you got. We're projecting forward now. We got to go ahead to the big clash Friday night, Mace. Have you had a Friday night in a while? You got to cancel your plans.
No, we haven't had a Friday night in a while. We're off the Sunday schedule. We're back on the Friday night and Saturdays, which is exciting.
Bloody good to see now. I don't know how many Carlton fans out there are having PTSD flashbacks of what happened last year, but Collingwood, Carlton, the old rivals, it's ignited once again for the Peter Mac Cup, which is always massive and great to see. Excited about this. I saw you at the Peter Mac
Cancer Center.
Yep.
Got to actually go in there and see some of the research stuff they have. They have zebra fish. Zebra fish there that like tanks of them, wild, and they use it in like the research. It's like they're showing us it's incredible what they do. And we obviously saw some patients. Was there with Sam Doherty and some of the other players, and Nick Dacos and Darcy Cameron with me, and got to give back to the community, which is awesome and amazing. But yeah, Peter Mac Cup this weekend, awesome initiative we do with them. It's I think the longest charitable combination with football in the league, I want to say. And there's a whole bunch of stats with Peter Mac that's just incredible what they're doing. Obviously people that have been diagnosed with cancer, it's almost like the worst thing you could possibly imagine. And it not only affects the person going through it, but the people around them. And to have incredible people from the doctors to the nurses to the surgeons and everyone else there. It's humbling whenever you go to those places. Like, and you visit these people and they're so excited to see you, and it's just like, man, like life is so like good. Like, it's, I hate to say it, but like it can be so much worse at times, and like those people are having it tough. So if you can bring some kind of, happiness or, hope their way, it's amazing. It's something that I guess as an AFL player, you love to do because it's an honor and it's a privilege to be able to do what we do. But it's also, I think, one of those things we got to realize that we have the opportunity to be able to give back and make such a big difference in people's lives.
Carlton, what are you looking forward to? I reckon Charlie Curnow not going to have as easy a game. He had Barras laid out last week. Obviously, it was pretty much the worst thing that could have possibly happened to West Coast.
Darcy Moore, Charlie Curnow is going to be lick your lips good.
Oh, it's going to be exciting.
Man. But I think also, and I said this in the presser at Peter Mac, I said, I know Collingwood fans will hate this, but I kind of like the fact that Carlton's going well.
Yeah,
because
100%.
This means that it is going to be a sellout, just passionate game. And people are going to be off their chops just losing it at this place. And it's going to be an epic environment.
Yeah, the game last year was just like the environment was crazy. So
insane.
I can't wait for that again. If it's half the game that was, maybe Jamie Elliott dust off his boots, do it all again. He is a freak.
Dude, wild. Just ice in his veins.
So we didn't even really touch on that.
Yeah.
He replicated his match.
Totally caught it in bounds too. Totally caught it in play. Totally in play. Without a doubt.
So he essentially replicated his Essendon winning game, a goal after the siren, almost pretty much a year on to the day. It's just insane the amount of games that he just loves the moment, loves to put the onus all on him and take the shot.
Oh, he's an absolute gun, and we see it week in, week out. He does so much, and we've talked about it over the last 3-4 weeks. He's really been able to be a key pillar up there in that forward line and kick a lot of goals. And it was awesome to see him just get that moment and just own it, just absolutely own it. And it was a massive, massive point in the game that he kind of got us on top and was able to get us over the line.
Now, I reckon we should just have a little bit of a glance forward before we wrap things up here, because there are some big games next week. And we're looking at Bulldogs v GWS. My boys got a chance to, prove their worth against one of the better teams in the competition. Bulldogs, they're a bit up and down with their form. So
at Marvel?
It's at Ballarat.
Ballarat.
Yeah, so
rat-a-tat-tat.
Take the extra jacket, the water bottle, the hot water bottle out there, because she's going to be a cold one, no doubt. I didn't even have to look at the radar because I know it's going to be shocking weather out there. We got the Q Clash Mach 2 for this year. Suns v Lions at Heritage Bank Stadium up on the Gold Coast there. That'll be another ripper. Essendon, Sydney, both two teams clinging on to the 8.
Get the dub.
And then we got the absolute thriller, Adelaide Oval, another showdown clash, Adelaide v Port Adelaide. That'll be just a crazy game. Richmond v Melbourne. Richmond still trying to do their thing, cling on. And then we got absolute bangers to finish the weekend. None other than the Hawthorn Football Club versus St Kilda and West Coast Eagles versus North over there in the Spoon Bowl.
The Spoon Bowl. Who do you got, West Coast or North?
This is crazy. When do you reckon the last time the West Coast Eagles would have been the underdog against North Melbourne at Perth? It's crazy. That's got to be one of the rarest things.
How old is North Melbourne's club? They're pretty old, so I'm going to go like 50 years.
Well, I don't know the actual answer.
We'll let someone else look up the details on that one. But it is an incredible weekend of football. A lot of big games in there for the 8.
That's crazy. It's really coming down to the wire, as everyone's been banging on about ad nauseum. Oh, the ladder's close, the ladder's close.
Port Adelaide. I want to say this, man. Whenever I was rolling through Adelaide, people were like, hey, beat the shit out of Port. Like they Adelaide people hate the other team with a passion. It is the Carlton Collingwood literally in Adelaide whenever it comes to Port Adelaide and Adelaide. They hate each other with a passion.
I feel the more you go west, the more the crowd gets passionate. So that'll be a good one to actually see where Adelaide's at the moment.
Oh, can you imagine though, like on the hill? Adelaide versus Port Adelaide. Oh, that's the place. That's the money spot for the weekend.
I'll give you a hot tip. I'd just be calling up the security company and doubling the numbers. There's no way that I'd split them down the middle. I'd be zoning that thing out. There's no way that they should be, mingling together. That's a crazy one.
Absolute goal. But that is it for the podcast. Excited for later this week. We finally get to release Leon Davis.
Oh, it's such a good pod.
And this is such a great pod. Like, oh my gosh, tell your friends about this one because I'm telling you, you're going to learn a lot. And he's a person with some great stories. It is an absolute bloody ripper, as you would say. But that's coming out on Wednesday afternoon. So make sure you've subscribed and have the notifications on. So whenever that drops, you can check it out and download that. But that is it from us for the week. But we're going to have some exciting stuff, obviously, with Leon. Then we've got new gear. The hats are back. We are back. They were sold out. We got them back in stock. And we also have a new jumper, a gray jumper. So we are expanding our merch that we have, which is exciting.
The gray jumper.
Gray jumper's nice. Looks slick. So check that out. But from a footy perspective, that is the wrap up. We're excited for Friday night. Collingwood versus Carlton. Massive game. And obviously, like we mentioned, a lot of other big games shaping up on the ladder.
Now, I want you to go out there this weekend, and I need you to get more taps or more goals because Kingy's watching, and we can't have another debacle.
We can't have another Seinfeld episode, can we?
Can't have another big show about nothing. Nothing, mate.
What a wild statement to make on a shit podcast. Anyway, that's it for us. Everyone enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll speak to you soon.
Peace.